What's up, Rovers? For those of you that clicked on this video, know that this is a follow-up to the complete Zani guide I uploaded last week. All 5-star characters in this video are S0R0, except where explicitly mentioned otherwise. As mentioned, the team building guide will be far more extensive and also includes Zani's more complicated teams. We'll include all team variants, gearing, and rotations. If you'd like to see our runs in full, I will also be uploading a video after this comes out of every Zani team as raw run footage without the time slow used today to explain rotations. It is assumed you have a basic understanding of Zani mechanics. If you're unfamiliar, I advise you to watch my Zani guide video first, at the top right. The 2.0 Spectro team is now considered complete, with its paper DPS parse being proof. Zani Phoebe teams are still confirmed to sheet 15 to 20% higher than next best team comps, and can easily perform 5 to 10% better even for the average casual player. We can expect the new damage ceiling of Zani teams to represent the overall power scaling each second generation mono element team will reach. This includes the Changli Brant Lupa team when she comes out, and most likely the Carlotta Chacona Arrow Rover team as well. In the meantime, let's focus on Zani because she has more options than you'd expect. Now, Zani's intended role is a main DPS that deals out record-breaking amounts of damage. Her DPS is roughly evenly split in her liberation, making her not the obvious best pick for speedruns since you cannot open like Changli's early liberation nuke, or skip hits the fast forward to Carlotta's fatal finale. Thus, while Zani theoretically has the highest DPS, her evenly split output prevents her from completely overshadowing her peers. She is further held back by requiring a Frazzle support to funnel her blaze stacks to complete a proper DPS rotation that is otherwise cut short. However, this does not mean Zani is unplayable without Frazzle supports, because her raw damage is so high, so she can choose to fit into the sub-DPS role as well. Lacking Frazzle support only subtracts one full heavy chain in her ult. This allows her to retain enough raw damage to surpass all other sub-DPS currently, cementing her place as a viable sub-DPS even if she lacks synergistic buffs. For the sake of efficiency, we will only include synergistic Zani teams today to highlight her best options. Rest assured, the list is very long already. Lastly, many of Zani's movesets include long animations heavily favoring quick swap scenarios. This video will start with her most basic teams first and slowly lead into the more complicated setups that take advantage of these quick swaps. Now, while Zani does not require her intro, it is still favored since it provides half her Forte bar to reduce her reliance on quick swap and triggers her inherent skill plus 12% spectro damage for 14 seconds. We will always give her an intro in today's demonstrations. Otherwise, every main DPS Zani team will include a Frazzle support. In teams that include Spectro Rover, it is assumed the player will perform 3 Forte skills minimum, because this both leads to higher Rover personal damage and grants Zani more blaze, while also allowing you to skip Rover's intro if needed, and fast forwarding future team rotations. Zani's standard 2-fold chain rotation requires roughly 12 seconds to perform, but we will also be taking a look at the 3-fold chain rotation later onwards. All teams shown aim to be completed in 30 seconds or less, but most will finish in about 24 to 26 seconds to optimize for cooldown restrictions. Zani does not care about Shorekeeper over Verina. Just note that Shorekeeper teams have stronger buffs, and thus deal slightly higher damage. Zani plus Frazzle support overall field time is just high enough that it is not feasible to make the team fast enough for Verina to have an advantage in speed. Otherwise, keep in mind that Zani's liberation mode is her main source of damage and is locked behind a standard 25 seconds cooldown. For character builds, it is assumed Zani is on Eternal Radiance with 120 ER, as it is a 15 to 20% personal damage increase versus the old Celestial Light set and the biggest gap for a main DPS yet. All sub-DPS Phoebes should be running 110 to 120 ER with a choice between Eternal Radiance or a Moonlit Cloud Ascent. The difference is negligible, so use the one that has better substats. If you're running 110 ER, you will need to perform an extra basic chain for energy during Zani's Nightfalls, whereas the 120 ER doesn't need to do this. All sub-DPS rovers only need 110 to 120 ER, which is already guaranteed from her S3, granting a permanent 20%. Rover can choose between Eternal Radiance or Moonlit Cloud Ascent. In dual DPS setups with units like Carlotta, Changli, Jinhsi, or Yao, Rovers should be on Healer set instead. For Verina and Shorekeeper, both should be on 250 ER in combat with Healer set. If a different amount of ER than these standards is required, it will be listed in the team's respective gearing section. Let's start out with Zani's most straightforward teams. In these setups, Zani deals the majority of the team's damage output, and quick swap is not as prevalent within Zani's liberation mode. This is the recommended section if you're not experienced with Zani teams. It is the easiest path to maximum performance, as the intended premium team setups usually are. Your main teammate choices include Phoebe, Spectro Rover, and Shorekeeper or Verina. Phoebe rotations are easier to perform since she's not locked behind any timers mid-rotation, meaning she can get everything done in one go. Spectro Rover's Forte skill casts have a 6 seconds cooldown tied to them, meaning a minor amount of quick swap is required as a baseline to get both casts out. As a reminder, all teams that include Rover today will actually be going for 3 Forte skills instead of 2, increasing their personal damage, granting more blades to Zani, and allowing you to skip Rover intro if desired. As a budget option for those with unbuilt Spectro Rover and no available Verina or Shorekeeper, Mortefi offers a competitive side grade in free-to-play teams. This allows you to run an uninvested Rover and Mortefi to provide healer and moonlit set bonuses, while slapping a fat 38% heavy amplify outro buff onto Zani. Keep in mind, Mortefi's outro expires on swap. He should be on 140 ER moonlit set with Impermanence Heron. Give him static miss for the attack buff to pass onto Zani if you can. Finally, please note that Zani's strongest team actually is Rover, Phoebe, Zani, and does not include Verina or Shorekeeper. This occurs because Rover deals far more damage than Shorekeeper or Verina, and also carries a minus 10% Spectro Shred that is basically permanently active on the enemy. The extra blaze from double Frazzle support also allows Zani to perform 3 full heavy slash chains instead of 2, leading to significantly higher team damage output. While much more complicated to play, this is currently the strongest team in the game and averages about 10% higher raw damage than the Shorekeeper Phoebe Zani variant. First is the cookie cutter premium team with maximum performance for least effort. We open with Shorekeeper's basic 1-2-3 or Verina's Liberation to proc buffs and then swap to Zani's skill plus basic 3 to fill half her Forte for later. Then swap to Phoebe and go into confession mode. By now, Shorekeeper has finished her basic chain, so we go back for another basic 1-2-3, with a heavy hold when basic 3 is about to come out and a Liberation cancel. Then basic 1-2-3 again and heavy with skill plus echo into outro. If you're on Verina instead, swap to her for a basic 3-4-5, skill plus echo, and aerial times 2 to outro into Phoebe. She should immediately cast her ring skill and animation cancel with liberation plus echo. Then perform 2 basic chain attacks with star flash so she can outro into Zani. If you're inside your ring, you can dodge cancel basic 3 for a faster star flash. Do not do this outside the ring, otherwise you will lose concerto from basic 3 not happening. Zani intros and performs her full Forte skill plus echo. You can skip the full animation if you want since Phoebe already caps Zani's blaze. However, you must wait out until the first hit of the twirl connects so Zani applies 1 Ember to proc Eternal Radiance's 5-piece plus 20% crit rate buff. Then go into Liberation and spam 2 full heavy slash chains, Liberation again, and then skill plus basic 3 shield bash before casting outro. Shorekeeper teams will reset into her, obviously, performing a basic 1-2-3 before swapping to Phoebe to recast Confession, then swap back to Shorekeeper and complete her rotation like before. Verina teams will instead reset into Phoebe directly, pre-holding skill during the intro animation to cast Confession as early as possible, then swap to Verina to finish her rotation. Both teams then intro Phoebe to continue like before. If you want to spice up this team a bit more, you can save 1 second on the Shorekeeper team by pre-charging Zani's Forte bar without needing her intro, letting her cast a full Forte skill while Phoebe is still finishing her rotation. Sunburst buff duration lasts 14 seconds, so this leaves enough time for Zani to DPS. To do this, perform Zani's skill plus basic 3 shield bash at the top of her rotation. Then, when you swap to Phoebe, perform hold skill plus echo and immediately cast her liberation to cancel the animation and reset swap cooldowns. Basic attack once and swap back to Zani to throw her shield, performing breakthrough. This will fill the rest of her Forte bar early. You can now go back to your healer and finish their opening rotation. Then during Phoebe's first star flash, you can swap to Zani to precast your full Forte skill plus echo. Once ready stance ends after half a second and targeted action or forcible riposte begins, swap back to Phoebe to perform her second chain into star flash so you can outro directly into Zani's liberation. Now, for the Sweaty version premium team variant, this is for the sweatiest players who want the absolute most of their Zani. We aim to complete everything within 23 seconds while also squeezing in extra casts for Phoebe so that she no longer needs her intro. This leaves leeway for dodging and mistakes while still fitting within the 25 seconds cooldown limitation and maximizing damaging actions. We open with Shorekeeper basic 1-2-3, then swap to Zani for the standard skill plus basic 3 shield bash. Swap to Phoebe and hold skill confession plus echo into a liberation cancel. Instantly dodge cancel a ring skill cast, and as soon as her feet leave the ground for basic 2, swap to Shorekeeper and perform a basic 1 plus heavy. Do this by letting go of attack right before you bring Shorekeeper, then press once and hold the attack down. This will both add the last Forte segment and instantly drain it. Liberation cancel immediately and cast basic 1 again before swapping back to Phoebe to perform basic 3 with the auto attack on swap in and her first star flash. The timing for swapping back is only half a second. If you cannot pull this off, cue Phoebe's full basic 1-2-3 chain before swapping to Shorekeeper. It'll be about 0.5 to 1 second slower. Afterwards, swap back to Zani and perform a skill plus basic 3 shield bash again to early fill her Forte. I stayed too long here on her before swapping off and wasted about 1 full second. Go back to Shorekeeper and perform another basic 1-2-3. Now we cast Zani's full Forte skill to set up Sunburst, swap to Phoebe and do her second basic chain into second star flash. Unless she dodged, she should not have enough to outro yet. If she does outro into Zani, cast Zani's Liberation early to push up its cooldown for second rotation onwards. Swap back to Shorekeeper and finish her rotation with basic 1 plus heavy and skill and echo to outro. If Phoebe has not outroed yet, intro her here so she can proc her 100% Frazzle amplify outro. Otherwise, you can outro directly onto Zani. Perform 1 full heavy slash chain and swap off as soon as Nightfall starts. Do a full basic 1-2-3 chain on Phoebe for Concerto. Swap back to Zani and perform a second full heavy slash chain. If Zani's Concerto isn't full yet, swap back to Phoebe again and do another basic 1-2-3 chain. Swap back to Zani when second Nightfall lands and cast Exit Liberation. Outro back onto Shorekeeper, and next rotations are near identical, except Shorekeeper just requires less actions to outro this time. When you reach the second skill plus basic 3 shield bash combo during the prep phase, we finish Shorekeeper's rotation directly on the swap in. Intro into Zani and it casts her full Forte skill, then swap back to Phoebe and perform her second basic chain into Star Flash to outro. It is preferable to not intro Phoebe if possible because she has the longest intro animation in the game, which can only be cut short by swapping off early before it completes. Otherwise, Zani continues her liberation mode, squeezing Phoebe basic chains between Nightfall, Zapater, Energy, and Concerto for making up skipping her intro. Phoebe can be replaced with Spectro Rover for a more free-to-play friendly team. While this represents a significant damage loss, team damage can be leveraged by casting extra Rover Forte skills for more personal damage, and more converted Frazzle into Blaze for Zani. It is expected for the player to perform 3 times Forte skills with Rover and Zani teams because it is not too difficult to perform. Please note that the healer Rover Zani rotation here is different from the one in the original Zani guide, and has been optimized for higher damage and faster rotations. We open with Shorekeeper's basic 1-2-3 or Verina's Liberation to proc buffs. Immediately swap to Rover with basic 1 plus Echo. Cast Liberation to get it off cooldown and pre-hold heavy during the animation to set up a Forte segment, with 2 follow-up enhanced basics. Then skill plus basic follow-up. If on Shorekeeper, swap back to her for basic 1-2-3 with a heavy hold when basic 3 is about to come out, plus a Liberation cancel. Swap to Zani for skill plus basic 3 shield bash, then finish Shorekeeper's rotation. If on Verina, you will want to swap out Rover's skill directly into Zani's skill plus basic 3 shield bash instead. Then swap back to Verina for basic 3-4-5, skill and echo into outro. Both healers should outro into Rover, who will immediately perform a skill plus basic and outro into Zani. Cast Forte skill plus echo and swap back to Rover. Perform a hold heavy with 2 enhanced basics for Forte. Immediately swap back to Zani and cast Liberation. Perform the first full heavy slash chain. Swap off as Nightfall starts to Rover and perform a skill plus basic follow-up. Swap back to Zani and perform her second heavy slash again. Then, once the second Nightfall starts, swap to Rover and perform a heavy plus enhanced basic attack times 2, before swapping back to Zani to cast Exit Liberation and outro to reset the team. Shorekeeper variants should cast skill plus basic on Zani before outroing. Both teams reset onto Spectro Rover. This is beneficial even for the Shorekeeper team because it allows our Rover Liberation and skill to be buffed by Gold Stella Realm before Shorekeeper intro resets it. Then do Shorekeeper basic 1-2-3 plus Liberation and another 1-2-3 plus heavy as basic 3 begins, and then a skill and echo to outro into Zani. If you're using a Moonlit Rover instead of Eternal Radiance, you can choose to reset the team into Shorekeeper directly. Run their entire rotation, then outro into Rover to Liberation plus skill, and Echo outro into Zani. Verina versions don't need to cast skill plus basic 3 on Zani before she outros because we will double intro her for Forte bar. Reset the team onto Spectro Rover and cast Liberation plus skill and Echo to outro onto Zani. Then immediately swap to Verina for basic 3-4-5 with Liberation cancel. Then skill and Echo to outro to Zani a second time. If you're using a Moonlit Rover instead of Eternal Radiance, still reset the team into Rover, but then immediately swap into Verina's rotation. Outro her onto Zani, then immediately swap back to Rover to cast their Liberation and Echo, and skill to outro onto Zani a second time. Both Shorekeeper and Verina variants continues like before once you intro Zani for the full Forte skill, running Rover's Heavy plus Enhanced Basic ×2 at the same time, then a Rover Forte skill during first Nightfall, and another Heavy plus Enhanced Basic 2 during second Nightfall. Now, the most free-to-play of free-to-play Zani teams doesn't even include Verina and Shorekeeper at all, and it's perfect if you only have Verina who's already taken up by a different team. Spectro Rover is arguably an even better healer slot due to much higher personal damage providing blaze stacks, and also a minus 10% Spectro shred for the team. But this team is also harder to play than Zani's standard teams, thus I only recommend it if your Spectro Rover is not invested enough to do damage and or lack a second healer for a team too. Unlike Phoebe mainDPS, Zani doesn't self-dilute her heavy damage with amplify buffs as much, and benefits a lot more from Mortefi's 38% heavy amplify outro. We open with Rover's Heavy Hold into 2 enhanced basics for Forte. Immediately cast Forte skill with basic follow-up before setting up a Zani skill plus basic 3 shield bash. Swap to Mortefi to cast skill and swap back to Rover Liberation as fast as you can. This will allow just enough time dilation for Mortefi's skill animation to play out. Swap back to him to skip to basic 4, filling the rest of his Forte. Cast Forte skill on him and swap back to Rover for another Heavy plus 2 enhanced basics. Swap back to Mortefi one more time for basic 4 to fill half his Forte, and optionally do another shield bash on Zani. Swap back to Rover and cast Forte skill to outro into Mortefi. Cast his Liberation to proc his 20% team attack buff at S6, cast another full Forte skill, and Heron cancel to outro into Zani. Perform her full Forte skill. Make sure you land at least the first twirl for the Ember to proc 5-piece ETR set for plus 20% crit rate. Then Liberation. Do her entire Unga Bunga chain without swapping off to keep Mortefi's outro buff. Then exit Liberation and immediately outro into Rover. Cast skill plus basic follow-up, then swap to Zani's skill plus basic 3 shield bash. Do Mortefi's quick swap again, casting skill with Rover Liberation cancel, coming back to him to skip to basic 4 plus full Forte skill again, then Rover Heavy plus follow-ups, and another basic 4 on Mortefi to fill half Forte. Finish Rover's rotation onto Mortefi, then cast his ult plus Forte skill again, and Heron to do Zani's DPS a second time. Enjoy! Now, the triple Spectro team is Zani's strongest standard setup that doesn't get into weird double DPS shenanigans. This team is the only way to grant Zani 3 full heavy slash chains before S6, and is stronger than any other variant of Zani Hypercarry. It is easily explained due to the entire team dealing actual damage each, with Rover far exceeding Shorekeeper's personal output, being all spectral damage, and Rover bringing a minus 10% spectral shred to apply on the enemy, while still being able to carry healer set herself. This is on top of Zani providing an outro that grants the entire team plus 20% spectral amplify against enemies marked by helical embers, which Rover can take advantage of perfectly, making this team roughly 10% stronger than the Shorekeeper or Verina variants. Of course, this comes with the most complex quick swap rotation available for what is still considered a normal Zani team. It should only take 27 seconds to perform, or roughly 2 to 3 seconds longer than the standard 2-chain Zani setups, which are limited by her 25 seconds Liberation cooldown. The team works by saving Liberations until very late during Zani's Inferno mode to refill her blaze instantly, so she can get the third heavy slash chain out. Because we start the fight with 0 concerto and no intro, we're forced to Liberation as early as possible in the first rotation so we can set up outro buffs as fast as possible, and must Liberation in both Phoebe and Rover a second time during the first rotation as soon as they come off cooldown. Conveniently, this occurs during each of Zani's Nightfall casts 5 seconds apart. While Phoebe can get by with just the standard 110 to 120 ER, Spectro Rover requires 160 ER in this team due to casting a second ult way earlier than normal and the first rotation just 20 seconds later. This is the only team today that requires abnormally high amounts of ER on Rover. Open with Phoebe's Confession mode with the Liberation cancel immediately, swap into Zani for a skill plus basic 3 shield bash, then swap to Rover for a basic 1 into Liberation cancel. We poked for Forte gain only, pre-hold heavy during the ult animation and exited to enhance basics, then cast skill without using the basic follow-up, swap to Phoebe to cast her ring skill and immediately dodge cancel, perform basic 1-2-3 and dodge cancel into Star Flash to save time. Optionally, fit a Zani shield bash in here to line ult cooldown timers for later. If you don't feel like you're going super fast, you can skip this. Go back to Rover for a heavy plus enhance basics ×2 again, then skill and outro into Phoebe. Perform her second basic 1-2-3 plus Star Flash combo, and outro into Zani. Cast her full Forte skill and Liberation cancel on the first hit of the twirl for the 5-piece ETR set plus 20% crit rate. Perform one full heavy/chain, swapping to Rover during Nightfall. Cast normal skill without Forte for energy, and Liberation to apply 6 more Frazzle to restore 30 blaze. Swap back to Zani and perform a second heavy/chain. Swap off during the Nightfall again to Phoebe. Hold skill into Confession and cast her Liberation. Swap back to Zani and perform her third full heavy/chain, then exit Liberation and outro back into Rover. Immediately cast Forte skill before swapping into Zani's skill plus basic 3 shield bash. Swap back to Phoebe to cast ring skill and immediately dodge cancel into a basic 1-2-3 plus dodge to cast Star Flash. Swap back to Rover and cast a heavy plus enhanced basics twice to generate Forte, then skill and outro into Phoebe. Finish her second Star Flash chain and outro into Zani. Cast full Forte skill again and cancel into Liberation on the first twirl hit for an Ember. Do one heavy/chain and cast Rover's Liberation during first Nightfall. Do another heavy/change and put Phoebe back into Confession mode plus her Liberation. Then do Zani's third heavy/ before exit Liberation plus outro reset onto Rover for third rotation. Honestly, I'd be really surprised if anything lived this long. There are 2 ways to play Zani Jinhsi teams. Only one of them can be the main DPS. This is because Jinhsi requires core teammates to do good damage, whereas Zani requires Frazzle teammates to do good damage. Therefore, the third unit of choice will determine who's the main DPS. The Zani main DPS versions of these teams are roughly similar DPS to Zani's standard teams, but much harder to play. Whereas the Jinhsi main DPS version of these teams is actually Jinhsi's new strongest team. This occurs because Zani in the subDPS role with no Frazzle support has roughly similar raw damage as Changli. However, Zani has a 20% Spectro Amplify outro that is actually possible to buff both of Jinhsi's pukes every rotation if the enemy has a helical ember on them. This increases Jinhsi's personal damage output to barely lower than a standard premium team with cohorts, but you get all of Zani's personal damage on top. Unfortunately, the outro only lasts 20 seconds, so you usually have a 2 to 3 seconds leeway to get both Jinhsi pukes buffed. This team is highly reliant on both Jinhsi and Zani having their signatures to outshine other premium Jinhsi teams. Normally, cohort units do not deal that much damage in a Jinhsi team, but units like Zani and Changli are an exception. In the case of Zani, she has a disproportionate amount of DPS gain from her signature if Phoebe is not present. Remember, the gap is 40% for her personal output. Thus, the signature weapon version of this setup will perform far better than the S0R0 showcase used for today. The drawback? These are the hardest Jinhsi team rotations to play, ever. There's a Cantarella version of this team in the spreadsheet I will not be showing today, because it is 2 seconds slower, does slightly less raw damage, and increases Jinhsi's ER requirements. Feel free to try it out if you don't have Zhezhi. Zhezhi will want the standard 120 ER Moonlight Clouds or Empyrean Anthem set using Impermanence Heron or Hikati as your forecast of choice. Cantarella would want the 140 ER Moonlight Clouds. Midnight Veiled works but isn't recommended. Jinhsi will want 120 ER in Celestial Light which way. If you're playing the Cantarella variant, Jinhsi will want 130 ER instead. The Phoebe and Spectro Rover builds are the same as all other teams today. Rover can use Healer set if they want. Let's start with the Jinhsi main DPS Zani subDPS variant. Perform Zhezhi basic 1-2 for Forte, then swap cancel into Zani skill plus basic 3 shield bash. Swap back to Zhezhi Liberation, then basic 1-2 again to fill her Forte gauge halfway. Swap back to Zani to throw her shield and cast Breakthrough before swapping into a partial Jinhsi jump cancel. basic 234 and cancel Incarnation with Liberation. Cast Crescent Divinity and swap to Zani to Echo and full Forte skill to set up Sunburst and apply Helical Ember. Swap back to Jinhsi and jump cancel spam her top half Dragon Puke. Outro into Zhezhi, then cast skill plus enhance basic to transform her Forte bar. Then swap to Zani to skill plus basic 3 to recharge half her Forte before she goes into Liberation for 1 heavy slash chain. When she reaches Nightfall, swap to Zhezhi and perform 2 skill teleports plus echo cast. Swap back to Zani and exit Liberation. Then skill plus basic 3 to shield bash again and fill the rest of your Forte. Cast full Forte skill and outro into Zhezhi. Cast her third teleport skill and outro into Jinhsi. Go into Incarnation skill, and dodge cancel or basic chain to get your bottom half puke as fast as possible. Reset the team into Zani, performing another skill plus basic 3 to recharge half her Forte. Immediately cancel into Zhezhi Liberation and cast basic 1, 2, 3, swapping into Jinhsi basic 2, 3, 4 to set up Incarnation again. It should still be on cooldown. Swap to Zhezhi and cast skill plus enhance basic to convert her Forte bar. Swap to Zani and cast her Echo plus full Forte skill to set up Sunburst and apply an Ember. Swap back to Jinhsi and cast Incarnation skill with Liberation cancel. Then perform jump cancel spam to get her top half puke out again. Outro onto Zhezhi, and immediately swap onto Zani to skill plus basic 3 to recharge half her Forte bar before going into her Liberation. 1 heavy slash chain like last time, swapping off during Nightfall to teleport skill twice with Zhezhi, then swap back to exit Liberation, skill plus basic 3 again to fill rest of her Forte, and then Forte skill to reapply Ember again. Outro onto Zhezhi and cast her third teleport skill to outro into Jinhsi. Go into Incarnation and dodge cancel her basic chain to get bottom half puke off in time again. Reset onto Zani like before to continue. The other two variants are Zani main DPS setups, with Jinhsi being the pocket sub-DPS. Her damage output will be far lower due to lacking core units, but still gives a nice 60-100k hit per puke depending on investment. As stated earlier, to Jinhsi's sub-DPS, Zani main DPS variants are not good demonstrations of Zani main DPS teams, being not any stronger than her standard premium setups. These two are just a for fun team versus the Jinhsi main DPS variant actually being a real improvement for Jinhsi teams. We open with Zani's skill plus basic 3 shield bash to charge Forte, then swap to Jinhsi basic 2-3-4 jump cancel setup, Incarnation skill plus Liberation cancel, the Crescent Divinity before swapping into Rover, basic 1 for Forte before Liberation, pre-holding heavy during the animation to lead with 2 follow-up enhanced basics, skill without the follow-up hit and swap into Jinhsi jump cancel spam for top up puke. Intro onto Zani and cast her Echo plus full Forte skill. Swap to Rover and do another heavy with 2 enhanced basics, then skill to outro onto Jinhsi. Cast Incarnation skill and swap to Zani, slamming down to cast Liberation. Perform first 2 heavy slashes. Swap off the instant Dawning starts to perform a basic 1-2 plus skill or basic 1-2-3 on Jinhsi. Swap back to Zani to cast Nightfall and mash swap back to Jinhsi. Get her basic 4 plus bottom half puke out as fast as possible, outroing into Rover. Cast skill and immediately swap back to Zani to perform her second heavy slash chain. During the second Nightfall, swap to Rover and perform heavy plus 2 times enhanced basics for Forte. Swap back to Zani to cast Liberation exit and outro onto Jinhsi to reset the team. Cast Incarnation skill with Liberation cancel. Then Crescent Divinity with a plunge cancel on Rover. Heavy into 2 enhanced basics and cast Forte skill. Swap onto Zani to skill plus basic 3 shield bash before swapping back to Jinhsi to jump cancel spammer top half puke. We outro onto Zani to set up Echo plus full Forte skill. Swap back to Rover once it starts and cast Liberation plus skill to outro onto Jinhsi. Cast Incarnation skill and plunge down with Zani to cast Liberation. Just like before, weave Jinhsi basic 1-2 inside of Zani's basic 2, Dawning. Then perform Nightfall at the same time as Jinhsi's basic 4 plus bottom half Dragon Puke. Outro onto Rover and skill to apply Frazzle, then do Zani's second heavy slash chain. Swap to Rover during second Nightfall to do a heavy plus enhanced basic times 2, and exit Liberation on Zani to reset onto Jinhsi again. Now, I will lead by saying that on the Phoebe variant, you just straight up shouldn't be playing this team. She lacks the 10% spectral shred that Rover has, which helps Jinhsi, meaning Jinhsi has absolutely zero synergy on this team at all, except Zani's lone 20% spectral amplify outro for the teams on enemies with helical embers. While this team is stronger than the previous two variants I just showed, it falls behind Zani's standard premium team still and is much weaker than the Rover, Phoebe, Zani triple Spectro team. Open with Zani's skill plus basic 3 shield bash to charge Forte, then swap to Jinhsi basic 2-3-4 jump cancel setup, Incarnation skill plus Liberation cancel to Crescent Divinity before swapping into Phoebe. Hold skill Confession plus Echo and Liberation cancel. Cast Rank skill and immediately dodge cancel into basic 1-2-3 with another dodge cancel to speed up Star Flash. Swap into Jinhsi jump cancel spam for top half puke, intro into Zani and cast her Echo plus full Forte skill. Swap to Phoebe and do her second basic 1-2-3 plus dodge into Star Flash to outro into Jinhsi. Cast Incarnation skill and swap to Zani slamming down to cast Liberation. Perform first 2 heavy slashes. Swap off the instant dawning starts to perform basic 1-2 plus skill or 1-2-3 on Jinhsi. Swap back to Zani to cast Nightfall and mash swap back to Jinhsi. Get her basic 4 plus bottom half puke out as fast as possible. Outroing on to Phoebe. Immediately swap back to Zani to perform her second heavy slash chain plus Liberation exit. Reset the team into Jinhsi, casting Incarnation skill with Liberation cancel. Then Crescent Divinity with a plunge cancel into Zani to skill plus basic 3 for Forte. We don't want to plunge on Phoebe because, well, she can't plunge. After Zani's shield bash, swap to Phoebe and hold skill Confession plus Echo and Liberation cancel. Cast Ring skill and immediately dodge cancel into basic 1-2-3 with another dodge cancel to speed up Star Flash. Swap into Jinhsi jump cancel spam for top half puke. Intro into Zani and cast her Echo plus full Forte skill. Swap to Phoebe basic 1-2-3 plus dodge into Star Flash to outro into Jinhsi's bottom half. Cast Incarnation skill and swap to Zani to plunge again into Liberation. Alternate her heavy slash swings with Jinhsi's basics to fit in the bottom half puke at the same time, outroing Jinhsi onto Phoebe. Then finish Zani's rotation and reset the team onto Jinhsi again. Now, Zani is also very compatible with Changli, Carlotta, and Changli Yao. No one needs to compromise their damage when these units are put together because they don't really have any support restrictions unlike Jinhsi. This allows a very flexible and flashy playstyle. Because Zani retains her full damage output, these teams are comparable to Zani's best standard premium teams. All of the following dual DPS setups range somewhere between Shorekeeper Phoebe Zani to the sweaty Rover Phoebe Zani. Take your pick on which playstyle you enjoy the best. Changli's setup is the flashiest and fastest, whereas Yao's has the most complicated swaps, even if at a controllable pace. Yao's version also has the highest damage by ever so slightly, and it's technically faster than even the Changli variant since Phoebe, Rover, and Zani all want to be on the ground, which makes the Changli team a little bit less favorable on swap overlaps. The Carlotta variant is the easiest one to play of all, but has just as much DPS as the Yao setup. Please note that I only have one 5-star Gauntlet, Verity's Handle, which is on my Zani. It's about 9% above Abyss Surges, but this meant I have nothing for my Yao, which is why his damage will look like garbage in the showcase. He's using a level 70 M&E cord. Focus on the rotation speed instead. Changli will want 120 ER Molten Rift set with Nightmare Rider. You will also have the option to run 2-piece with Lingering Tunes if you'd rather use Mech Abomination for ease of casting, since she doesn't have a grounded swap off or non-active skill cast window to actually cast Inferno Rider in this team. Yao should be on a 120 ER Void Thunder set with Nightmare Thundering Mephis. You also have the option to run 2-piece with Lingering Tunes if you'd rather use Mech Abomination for ease of casting. Carlotta should be on 120 ER and Frosty Resolve set with Sentry Construct. Do not use Freezing Frost, it is a 10 to 15% personal damage loss on Carlotta. Carlotta does not actually need to cast Sentry Construct on 120 ER if you're playing with a Rover, because she produces so much extra energy, especially with the 3x Forte skill setup for Blaze Generation. In the Phoebe variants though, Carlotta does need to cast her Sentry Construct on the second rotation onwards before her ult, otherwise she'll need 125 to 130 ER. Rover and Phoebe builds remain the same, but Rover now has the option to use Healer set if desired. For the Changli ones with Rover, will open with Changli's skill. Do not cast Liberation until she has reappeared at the top of her cast. This is how she gets her True Sight stack. Pre-hold Flaming Sacrifice and swap into Zani's skill plus basic 3 to build Forte. Pass over swap to Changli's stab before Rover's basic 1 plus Echo and Liberation cancel. Pre-hold Heavy to follow up the ult and then 2 enhanced basics. Cast skill without a follow-up hit and swap back to Changli. Cast her skill and swap to Zani's skill plus basic 3 to waste time as we need Changli's animation to play out. This pads the time between Rover and first rotation to make sure Forte's skill is off cooldown again when we cast it. Swap back to Changli to stab, then to Rover for a heavy plus 2 enhanced basics to build Forte. Skill should finally be off cooldown, so recast it and follow up to outro onto Changli. Basic to Phoenix, then skill and immediately outro onto Zani to reset her grounded state. Cast her full Forte skill, swapping to Changli when she hits the ground to get the last stab and cast Flaming Sacrifice. If you swap to Changli when she's still falling, she'll lose speed. Immediately swap to Zani to cast Liberation, then perform one full heavy slash chain. Swap to Rover during first Nightfall to perform heavy plus enhanced basic times 2 with an immediate Forte skill cast. Do not do the basic follow-up, and immediately swap back to Zani to do her second heavy slash chain. Swap back to Rover during the second Nightfall to perform another heavy plus enhanced basic times 2, but only if Zani's concerto wasn't full. Then finish Zani's exit Liberation and reset the team onto Changli. Do not attack here. Immediately cast Liberation and pre-hold heavy to cast Flaming Sacrifice, without using the True Sight stat gained from her intro. Swap to Rover and cast Forte skill, then swap to Changli to finally use her stab. Recast skill and swap off to Zani. Perform skill plus basic 3 for half her Forte bar before swapping back to Changli to stab for a second Forte stack. Swap to Rover and basic 1 before Liberation cancel, pre-holding a heavy attack to follow up with an enhanced basic times 2. Immediately cast skill to outro back onto Changli. Basic to cast Phoenix and skill to force an outro onto Zani, grounding her. Once again cast full Forte skill, swapping to Changli when she lands the stab for her 4th stack and Flaming Sacrifice before immediately going to Zani Liberation to continue the team. Now, the Phoebe version of this Changli Zani is quite similar in timing and only has slightly different usage of swaps. Open up with Changli's skill. Again, do not cast Liberation until she has reappeared at the top of her cast to gain a True Sight stack. Pre-hold Flaming Sacrifice and swap into Phoebe. Hold skill into Confession mode with the Liberation cancel. Basic 1 and immediately swap to Changli's stab and recast skill. Swap to Zani before Changli goes in the air to remain grounded, casting skill plus basics 3 to generate half Forte. Swap back to Changli to stab for second Forte stack. Swap to Phoebe and cast Ring skill with a dodge cancel, cycling her Chemiel star basic 1-2-3 star flash chain twice, dodge canceling the third basic. Outro onto Changli, basic to Phoenix, then skill to immediately outro onto Zani and reset her grounded state. Cast full Forte skill, swapping to Changli to get the last stab and cast Flaming Sacrifice. Immediately swap back to Zani to cast Liberation, then perform one full heavy slash chain. Swap to Phoebe during first Nightfall to perform basic 1-2-3. Swap back to Zani to do her second heavy slash chain. Swap back to Phoebe during the second Nightfall to recast hold skill for Confession mode, but only if Zani's concerto wasn't full. Finish Zani's exit Liberation, then reset the team onto Changli. Do not attack. Immediately cast her Liberation and pre-hold heavy to cast Flaming Sacrifice, without using the True Sight stat gained from her intro. Swap to Phoebe and instantly cast Liberation. If you couldn't fit hold skill Confession in earlier, do it here before you cast Liberation. Then cast Ring skill plus dodge cancel, cycling her Chemiel star basic 1-2-3 star flash chain once. Swap to Changli to finally stab, and recast skill and swap off to Zani. Perform skill plus basic 3 for half of her Forte bar, before swapping back to Changli to stab for second Forte stack. Swap to Phoebe and do her second Chemiel star basic 1-2-3 star flash chain, outroing onto Changli. Basic to cast Phoenix and skill to force an outro into Zani, grounding her. Once again cast full Forte skill, swapping to Changli when she lands the stab for 4th stack and Flaming Sacrifice before immediately going into Zani Liberation to continue the team. Now, the Carlotta teams are slightly slower than Yao or Changli's setups because she cannot swap off during her Liberation, else she'll lose her 80% final damage buff. She makes up for this by having the highest personal damage out of the 3, keeping the team competitive with the other Zani DualDPS setups. This is the easiest DualDPS Zani setup to play. For Rover setups, open with Rover BA plus Liberation and Echo, then pre-hold heavy to immediately queue up with 2 enhanced basics afterwards for Forte. Cast skill with follow-up basic and swap to Carlotta. Cast skill, heavy, skill in that order to get cooldown going as early as possible and produce half Forte. Swap off to Zani to skill plus basic 3 shield bash for half Forte as well. Go back to Rover, basic once or twice, then set up a heavy attack with 2 enhanced basics again, and cast Forte skill the instant it comes off cooldown. outro onto Zani and cast Forte skill. Swap back to Rover and cast Heavy plus Enhanced Basic ×2, then instantly swap back to Zani to cast her Liberation. Do her first Heavy/Chain, and once Nightfall starts, swap to Carlotta to Heavy, as her skill most likely still has 0.5 to 1 seconds cooldown. Then cast skill ×2 to produce the missing half of her Forte. Quickly swap to Rover and cast Forte skill as fast as you can before swapping back to Zani to start her second Heavy/Chain. On the second Nightfall, swap to Carlotta with a pre-hold Heavy to cast her AoE nuke, and immediately swap back into Rover with a pre-hold Heavy plus Enhanced Basic ×2. Swap back to Zani to exit Liberation and outro into Carlotta, to skip the end of her intro animation and immediately enter her Liberation mode. Dump all 4 Death Knells plus Fatal Finale. Skill, and then Heavy, and then second skill before you outro to restore half her Forte bar. Reset the team into Rover and immediately cast Forte skill. Swap to Zani and skill plus basic 3 for half Forte. When Carlotta lands, swap back to her to cast Sentry Construct if desired. Otherwise, skip this and go to Spectro Rover to cast Liberation plus Echo. Free-hold Heavy during ult to queue it up again, and then outro onto Zani. The Heavy here was to pad Carlotta's skill cooldown timer. Zani performed full Forte skill while Rover does another Heavy plus Enhanced Basic ×2 before you cast Zani's Liberation to go for DPS mode round 2. The Phoebe version of the Carlotta Zani team is easier to play than the Rover variant because you don't have to constantly squeeze in Rover swaps to get around her 6 seconds Forte skill cooldown. This leaves more leeway for casting Carlotta's Heavy and skill ×2 setups to pre-charge her Forte before her intro, so you can cast Imminent Oblivion early. We open with Carlotta's Heavy plus skill ×2 to keep things simple. Swap to Phoebe and enter Confession mode with Echo plus Liberation cancel. Cast Ring skill and immediately dodge cancel it. Cast a Camille basic 1-2-3 dodge cancel on third basic into Star Flash, and swap into Zani. Do skill plus basic 3 shield bash to recharge her Forte, then swap back to Phoebe to cast her second basic plus Star Flash chain, outroing into Zani. Cast Forte skill and swap to Carlotta to set up a Heavy attack. Swap back to Zani and go into Liberation, performing the entire first Heavy/chain. Once first Nightfall begins, swap to Carlotta to cast skill ×2, and swap to Phoebe for a quick basic 1-2 for bonus Concerto. Swap back to Zani to perform second Heavy/chain. During the second Nightfall, swap to Carlotta and pre-hold Heavy to cast Imminent Oblivion. Swap back to Zani to exit Liberation and outro into Carlotta. Mash her Liberation key to skip the end of her intro animation and immediately enter Liberation mode. Dump all of her 4 Death Knells, then her Fatal Finale. Skill plus Heavy plus skill before you outro to restore half her Forte bar and reset the team into Phoebe, pre-holding Confession skill plus Echo during that intro animation. Liberation cancel as soon as she enters Confession, then cast Ring skill, dodge cancel it and cast Camille Star, Camille basic 1-2-3 dodge cancel onto a third basic into Star Flash. Swap into Carlotta to cast Sentry Construct for energy, then into a Zani skill plus basic 3 shield bash for Forte. Swap back to Phoebe, and complete her second basic 1-2-3 plus Star Flash chain to outro onto Zani. Cast her Forte skill while setting up a Carlotta Heavy attack, then enter Zani's Liberation to continue the team. Now, the Yao teams are actually almost too fast, as everything can be weaved inside of Rover's and Zani's DPS rotation. There are a lot of swaps to keep track of, but are somewhat slower pace. There's a specific Rover cancel on the first rotation that cannot be performed on mobile, but only results in a 1-second loss if you don't do it. Because the rotation is already sub 25 seconds, it's okay to skip this. Open with Yao's skill, cast Heavy as well if you're on Void Thunder for the 5-piece set, then cast his Echo and swap to Rover. Poke with basic 1 before casting Liberation plus Echo. If you're on PC, pre-hold your Heavy attack once the ult animation begins. Keep holding it and mash a swap to Yao plus his Liberation instantly as fast as you can. If you do this right, Rover will perform her Heavy attack during the end of Yao's ult animation, which lacks full time stop. Skill on Yao and swap back to Rover as fast as you can to land the follow-up Enhanced Basic ×2 to get your missing Forte. If you can't do this trick or on mobile, perform Rover's Heavy plus Enhanced Basic ×2 manually after her Liberation before swapping to Yao to cast Liberation. Anyways, once you cast skill plus basic follow-up on Rover, immediately swap back to Yao to cast his special Revamp Slam to fill the rest of his Forte and cast his first Law of Rains. Swap to Zani and cast skill plus basic 3 to fill half her Forte. Swap back to Yao and perform basic 1-2 to fill 3/5 of his Forte. Swap off as soon as the second attack begins to Rover. Do another Heavy plus Enhanced Basic ×2 before casting Forte skill, plus the basic follow-up to outro onto Zani. Cast her full Forte skill and swap to Yao to basic 1-2 and fill the rest of his Forte. Cast his second Law of Rains, and immediately swap to Zani to cast her Liberation. Perform the first 2 attacks in your heavy/chain, then swap to Yao. Wait half a second, then cast a special uppercut skill. Spam swap back to Zani to attack and start her first Nightfall. Then spam swap back to Yao again to cast a special revamp slam in time to fill the rest of his Forte bar. Cast third Law of Rains and outro onto Rover, cast her Forte skill, immediately swap back to Zani. Perform her second heavy/chain, and during second Nightfall, swap to Rover to cast heavy plus enhanced basic ×2. Finish Zani's Liberation exit and outro to reset the team into Rover. Cast Forte's skill and immediately swap cancel the start of the animation into Yao's Liberation. Cast the skill as fast as you can and swap back to Rover in time to catch the follow-up basic from her Forte's skill. Swap back to Yao to catch his special revamp slam and cast first Law of Rains. Swap to Zani to cast skill plus basic 3 to fill half Forte. Swap back to Yao to cast basic 1-2, echo optional here. Swap back to Rover to cast Liberation and skill plus basic attack follow-up. Then you outro onto Zani and cast her full Forte skill. Swap back to Yao to cast basic 1-2 to fill the rest of his Forte bar and then cast the second Law of Rains. Immediately swap back to Zani and cast her Liberation to begin Unga Bunga with Yao round 2. You'll probably still have 1 to 2 seconds cooldown on her Liberation here, so this is your leeway for mistakes. Remember to pause half a second during her Liberation's first swap back to Yao to get enough leeway on Yao's airtime after his uppercut and make it back on the later swap to cast the revamp slam to fill the rest of his Forte bar. Now, the Phoebe team version of this is a little bit slower, but still parses at about 24 seconds per rotation. This team once again uses the Phoebe basic 1-2 swap cancel when her feet raise off the floor that can be difficult to time, so feel free to run a full basic 1-2-3 if you can't pull the timing of the swap cancel off. It will only cost you about half to 1 second extra. The leeway on the basic 1-2 quick swap is only half a second to do. Anyways, open with Yao's skill, cast heavy as well if you're on Void Thunder, then cast his echo and swap to Phoebe. Hold skill to enter confession plus echo into a liberation cancel. Instantly dodge cancel a ring skill cast, and as soon as her feet leave the floor for basic 2, swap to Yao and cast his liberation. Mash his skill cast right after and swap back to Phoebe as fast as you can. If you do it right, she'll Q into basic 3 and you Star Flash immediately afterwards. Swap back to Yao as fast as you can to cast his special revamp slam to fill the rest of his Forte, and cast his first Law of Rains. Swap to Phoebe and perform another basic 1-2-3. Swap back to Yao as soon as her basic 3 begins to cast his basic 1-2 and fill 3/5 of his Forte bar. Swap back to Phoebe to cast second Star Flash and outro into Zani. Cast her Echo plus full Forte skill and then swap back to Yao during 2 basic 1-2 for his last Forte stacks and cast second Law of Rains. Immediately swap back to Zani to cast Liberation. Perform the first 2 attacks in your heavy/chain, then swap to Yao. Wait 0.5 seconds, then cast a special uppercut skill. Spam swap back to Zani to attack and start her first Nightfall. Then spam swap back to Yao again to cast a special revenge slam to fill the rest of his Forte. Cast his third Law of Rains and outro into Phoebe. Immediately swap back to Zani to end her intro animation early. Perform her second heavy/chain and finish her Liberation exit. Outro into Phoebe to reset the team. Pre-hold skill plus echo during the intro animation to instantly enter confession mode. You might have a cooldown until it lets you cast Liberation. Cast it, then cast ring skill and immediately dodge cancel it. Cast a Kemiel basic 1-2, and as soon as her feet leave the floor for basic 2, swap to Yao and cast his Liberation. Match his skill cast right after and swap back to Phoebe as fast as you can. Continue her basic 3 and Star Flash afterwards. Swap back to Yao as fast as you can to cast his special revamp slam, and cast his first Law of Rains. Then swap to Zani to skill plus basic 3 to charge her Forte halfway. Swap back to Yao for basic 1-2 to fill 3/5 of his Forte bar, then swap back to Phoebe to finally finish her second basic 1-2-3 plus Star Flash chain to outro into Zani. Cast her full Forte skill, swapping to Yao to cast basic 1-2 and second Law of Rains during. Immediately cancel into Zani's Liberation and Unga Bunga. You might have a 1 second's cooldown on her Liberation if you played perfectly. Just wait it out. Remember to pause half a second during her Liberation's first swap back to Yao to give enough leeway on Yao's airtime after his uppercut skill and make it back on the later swap to cast his revamp slam to fill the rest of his Forte bar. And that's it for the Zani team building guide. Thank you so much for watching through this entire video. I hope this has been useful for setting up and playing her teams. As a reminder, all spreadsheets documenting my testing can be found in the description and pinned comment. If you need a refresher on Zani herself, do feel free to check out her complete guide down there too. Cheers! If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like or better yet subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Stick around if you want to see interesting videos. Don't miss out on any of that, do you? That'll be it for this one. Thank you all for watching and I'll see you all next time.